Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past.
We're exiting what you call the industrial age, and we're going into this, information revolution. And it's clear that some things are happening. In the industrial age, society was a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid, you had a large pool of, you needed human labor. In the middle of the pyramid, you had kind of an information processing, a bureaucracy class. And at the top of the pyramid, you had your owners of capital and your entrepreneurs and your creative class. But we know what's happening already as we go into this information revolution. The bottom of that pyramid, automation is going to take over. Even that middle tier, information processing, that's what computers are good at. So as a society, we have a question. All this new productivity is happening.
A system of education that is modeled on the interests of industrialism and in the image of it. I'll give you a couple of examples. Schools are still pretty much organized on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialized into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. We put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? Why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? It's like the most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. You know what I mean? Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines, or at different times of the day, or better in smaller groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. If you're interested in the model of learning, you don't start from this production line mentality.
Is it just going to be that very top of the pyramid, in which case, what does everyone else do? How do they operate? Or do we do something that's more aspirational?
Do we really think, though, that we are nurturing creative thinkers? Because in the way that we currently teach or educate, it's sort of like we go after grades, scores, you learn, you memorize, do your homework. We're churning out excellent employees. But where are your innovative and creative thinkers?
Over the last 10 years or so to be able to travel the world and visit lots of schools and have lots of conversations with kids and teachers and parents and policymakers. And I'm here today to share with you kind of a surprising truth about learning in schools that I've gleaned from those conversations. It's actually a pretty challenging truth. It's something that might make us a little uncomfortable, both at a personal level and at a systems level. But before I share that truth with you, I want you to take a moment and just think a little bit about what it is that you believe about how kids learn most powerfully and deeply in their lives. What are the conditions that need to be present in order for kids to learn in a sticky way, learning that stays with them, learning that they can build on as they go through their lives? I think if I could get into most of your brains right now, I'd find a very consistent range of answers, answers that basically come from our own experience as learners. Over the last couple of years, I've actually asked that question to about 50,000 people at various conferences, presentations, workshops, face-to-face conversations that I've had. And I'm going to guess that most of what you were thinking is what they were thinking as well. I'm going to predict that most of what you were thinking is coming from this kind of built-up stock of intuitive knowledge, intuitive common sense knowledge that we have about learning. Seymour Papert is one of my best teachers. And I think he's right. We know what deep and powerful learning looks like because we're learners as well. And so it looks like this. This isn't rocket science when we talk about what learning requires. We know that it's based on passion. We know that the best learning that we do happens when it's for a real audience, for a real purpose, when it has relevance in our lives, when it's not constrained by time, and when there are other people around us who are passionate to learn those things as well. But now I want to share with you a list of answers that no one ever gives when I ask that question. And it's amazing to me that in just about every school that I visit, in just about every classroom that I enter, these are the conditions that exist for the kids in those environments. These are the conditions that we create for them when we expect them to learn. Now, I think this disconnect between what we believe and what we practice is really powerful. And it is this disconnect that has led me to this surprising truth about schools and about learning. And that is that schools were not built for learning. Now, I know that's a challenging statement. I know that that makes us feel uncomfortable.
And it's
but I
about
believe this not
standardization.
just because...
I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. There was a great study done recently of divergent thinking. Published a couple of years ago. Divergent thinking isn't the same thing as creativity. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. Divergent thinking isn't a synonym, but it's an essential capacity for creativity. It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways, to see multiple answers, not one. So, I mean, there are tests for this. I mean, one kind of cod example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? One of those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? You know, like, does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? You know. Now, there are tests for this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now, you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, okay. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, ages of 8 to 10. What do you think? 50? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older. But this shows two things. One is we all have this capacity, and two, it mostly deteriorates. Now, a lot of things have happened to these kids as they've grown up. A lot. But one of the most important things that happened to them, I'm convinced, is that by now they've become educated. You know, they've spent 10 years at school being told there's one answer, it's at the back. And don't look. And don't copy, because that's cheating. I mean, outside schools, that's called collaboration, you know, but inside schools. Now, this isn't because teachers want it this way, it's just because it happens that way. It's because it's in the gene pool of education. We have to think differently about human capacity. We have to get over this old conception of academic, non-academic, abstract, theoretical, vocational, and see it for what it is, a myth. Secondly, we have to recognize that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. If we atomize people and separate them and judge them separately, we form a kind of disjunction between them and their natural learning environment.
Education into the classroom is somewhat different from my time, probably different from yours as well. There is a certain strength in the academic rigor that we put our kids through. We are also moving our school system away from the overemphasis of academic results, bringing them out into the applied learning space where they don't learn mathematics by the timetable that you and I are used to. Kids as young as those in kindergarten now learn addition and subtraction without actually being told that they're learning mathematics. I met a couple of kids, 6 years old. They have a pretend pet shop with a cashier. I say, whoa, I love this rabbit. How much is it? She says $3. And I handed over some Monopoly money. This is $10. Can you give me back my change? And she very happily told me, sure, uncle, I'll give you back $7. That is learning mathematics through play.
Well, I think that's all fine and dandy. There's types of parents like you who really pro-play. I was talking to a parent the other day, and she's pro-play, but she wants her kid to be ready for school because when they go to school, that's what they're judging her by her grades. So there is a little bit of, contradiction here.
We need a partnership with parents and to assure them that there are many paths to success, new possibilities, not just through good grades. Today, you have so many avenues to succeed.